Desperate rancher rescues deaf girl from drunk dad. Shocking truth about her secret gift. The sun was dipping below the horizon, casting long shadows across the dusty fields as Jack Turner crouched by the old oak tree, thinking it was just another quiet evening on his ranch. Little did he know, a storm was brewing in the small town of Hollow Creek. It was the kind of storm that didn't just bring rain, it cracked open the darkness and revealed horrors that whispered through the wind. That evening, the air was thick with tension as he heard a girl's distant sobs. With each tearful note, disbelief knotted in his stomach. He sprinted toward the sound, a wild panic driving his steps. As he reached the edge of an abandoned barn, the shadows seemed to twist, alive with secrets. There he found her, a little girl, no older than 7. Her clothes were tattered, her eyes wide with fear, and her tiny hands trembled in the chill. She was deaf, yet she could see into souls, as if the world whispered its darkest truths to her. A chill crawled up Jack's spine. She'd been left alone to the mercy of a man spiraling into chaos. Suddenly, the noise of an engine roaring to life broke the stillness, a rusted pickup screeching to a halt. Jack's heart raced. It was her father, reeking of whiskey and anger, stumbling out of the truck like a monster dragged from the depths. The girl's soft whimpers morphed into a desperate plea for help as Jack's instincts kicked in. He couldn't let her go back. He had to do something. Hey! Get away from her! He shouted, his voice rising above the chaos. The father turned, eyes glazed, mistaking fury for strength. The townsfolk murmured nearby, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and impending horror. Jack's heart pounded, fueled by raw urgency. He stepped forward, ready to fight for the girl. She didn't deserve this life. For a moment, silence conquered the air, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on them all. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Jack held his breath as the father took a staggering step toward him. No one moved. Everything felt like a movie on the edge of disaster. The girl's eyes darted between them, fear turned to hope as Jack stood his ground. And in that heartbeat, something flickered in her gaze, a silent bond forged in shared despair. What if she had powers he couldn't comprehend? What could this little girl really do? The air crackled with unspoken words, as Jack sensed they were on the brink of uncovering something extraordinary. Did she really possess a gift? He prepared himself for the worst, knowing that this moment would change everything. But just then, the earth trembled with another roar, a noise nobody was expecting, and it felt like the ground beneath them would swallow them whole. What now? What would happen next? The tension snapped like a taut wire as the sky seemed to explode into a cacophony of sound. A low rumble grew, an ominous growl that vibrated through Jack's bones and sent a shiver coursing down his spine. The crowd, a motley assortment of townsfolk who had gathered to witness, erupted into chaos. People began to scream and scramble, fearing the unknown force that surged toward them. Jack's senses sharpened. He grabbed the girl's hand, squeezing it gently but firmly, trying to instill a flicker of courage. "Stay close," he yelled, his voice barely cutting through the panic. He could see the shadows swirling around them, swirling into a fierce storm, but his attention was laser-focused on her father. "Get away from her!" Jack shouted again, a primal yell rising from his gut. The man staggered, shaken by the unseen force, a mix of alcohol and fear creating a volatile cocktail. For a heartbeat, it seemed the world would collide. Jack's heart thudded loudly in his ears. Suddenly, the ground beneath them cracked, sending splinters of dirt and debris flying. Jack stumbled, the deaf girl clinging to him tighter, her wide eyes reflecting the chaos enveloping them. He could barely comprehend what was happening. A flash of light shot across the sky, illuminating an unnatural figure hovering above the ranch. The swirling storm had birthed something inexplicable. It was a swirling mass of darkness and light, blending in a dizzying array of colors, taking forms that twisted and turned, dancing dangerously close to earthly realms. The girl, still holding on to Jack, began to tremble violently, yet there was a glimmer in her expression and awareness, perhaps even recognition. She lifted her small finger, pointing toward the storm, her mouth opening in silent awe. Jack followed her gaze. "What is it?" he whispered, the gravity of the moment grounding him. The little girl watched as if she were seeing something far beyond what the grown-ups could comprehend. He turned back to her father, who swayed and blinked, lost in a nightmarish abyss. What have you done?" The father's voice slurred, his eyes narrowing into mere slits as he stumbled backwards. "I didn't mean to." Jack's blood ran cold. Had this man somehow summoned the chaos? The girl pressed closer, now trembling with fear that transcended what they could both see. It wasn't just the storm. The air thickened with an otherworldly energy that pulled and tugged at Jack's very core. Then, without warning, a deafening boom echoed, like thunder clapping down from the heavens. A bolt of energy shot down from the swirling storm, slamming into the ground just a few feet away from them, sending shockwaves through the earth. Dirt and dust whirled into the air, obscuring everything in sight. Jack's stomach dropped as he shielded the girl from the debris, fear igniting within him. He glanced over at her, helplessness washing over him. "What do we do?" he yelled against the howling wind. She looked up, and in that moment, their eyes locked. Something shifted between them, a silent promise that sparked a flicker of hope in the mounting terror, and then, amidst the chaos and confusion, she began to sign with urgency, her hands moving swiftly, each gesture imbued with a certainty Jack had never seen before. He strained to understand her, but it felt as if she were trying to tell him something vital, something that could change their fates. Before he could make sense of her message, the air crackled again, and the storm roared with an intensity that made the very ground tremble. Courage surged through Jack. He realized they had to act now. "We'll face this together," he shouted, gripping her hand tighter. But deep down, an unsettling fear gnawed at him. Could this little girl truly wield power beyond their understanding? Or was this storm a harbinger of doom for them both? As the winds howled and chaos reigned, time froze for Jack. What lay ahead was uncertain, but one question burned in his mind: what was the secret this little girl was hiding, and could it save them from the darkness that had come to claim them? Jack took a deep breath, ready for the unknown, unaware of the true dangers yet to surface. The air thickened as the storm continued its merciless assault. Jack's heart raced, each beat echoing against the mounting dread. The swirling mass above him crackled with energy, and lightning danced dangerously close, fretting the edges of the chaos. He pulled the girl closer, his senses heightened, aware that every moment counted. "Talk to me," he shouted, desperate to catch her signs through the raging wind. "What do we do?" His words felt futile, swept away like leaves in a tempest. The girl's hands played through the air, a furious ballet of urgency. Her fingers danced as if weaving a spell, yet Jack could only grasp fragments. "Find power," she signed, eyes wide and burning with intensity. "Power?" Jack echoed, and with every syllable he felt the weight of the storm's judgment. "Where?" The girl pointed again, this time toward the heart of the swirling darkness. An instinct drew Jack in, something primal urged him forward. He felt the pull of a magnetic force, as if the storm itself called him, promising revelations hidden within its chaos. "Stay close," he barked, pulling her along as he stepped cautiously over the jagged ground. Cracks erupted like wounds, the earth trembling beneath their feet. Townsfolk scattered, lost to their own fears, faces pale with panic. The father, still swaying, still twisted in his own ongoing nightmare, began to shout at the storm, an angry figure against the insanity surrounding them. His voice was drowned out by the roar of the tempest, but Jack could see the desperation written across his features. "You brought this. You did this." Jack's anger flared as he shot a glare at him. The man stumbled back, shaken, and his gaze turned to Jack. I didn't mean it, he stammered, tears glistening in his bleary eyes. Jack wanted to scream that he had no time for excuses. His focus shifted back to the girl, who now held her hand out toward the thunderous mass, tiny fingers trembling but resolute. Do you know it? Jack squeezed her hand, and she nodded slightly. We have to try. We need to find out what you can do. The girl's eyes flickered with determination, a brightness that defied the shadows hanging above them. As if sensing their resolve, the storm began to shift, swirling more violently, colors blending into an unsettling hue of despair. Jack's breath caught, his skin prickling with the piercing energy. He could feel it rising, intensifying like a heartbeat. Focus. He urged the girl, pushing through fear. Concentrate. With an intensity that stilled the world for just a moment, the girl raised her other hand, completing the gesture, fingers weaving together like a bridge, seemingly inviting the storm closer. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted from the storm's center. Jack shielded his eyes as the air thickened around them, whispering notes of power and possibility. An overwhelming force rushed toward him, and in that instant, everything shifted. A wave of energy pulsated from the girl's hands, striking Jack deeper than the storm's roar, sending a shiver down his spine. That it invaded his thoughts, painting images of past traumas, hopes, and fears. Jack felt a connection, an unthinking understanding of what the girl's gift meant. But before he could process it, the ground rumbled violently. Look out! He shouted. The earth beneath them creaked and moaned, fissures stretching wider. Just as he realized what was about to unfold, an ear-splitting crack split the air, and the earth fractured, a deep chasm opening like a mouth ready to swallow them whole. Run! Jack cried, dragging the girl back, but she stood her ground, her face fierce with resolve. Power! She yelled silently, her hands pleading as she stepped closer to the edge. Panic seized Jack. No! We can't! He fought against her push, but her eyes held a truth he couldn't decipher. What was it she believed in? What power could she harness from this chaos? As the storm swirled with more ferocity, Jack realized, the girl held the key and perhaps even his only hope. Yet, with every flicker of strength, the darkness threatened to consume them all. Please, he gasped. Desperate for understanding. You have to show me how. The moment hung in balance, raw and poised to shatter. What awaited them in that storm could change everything or doom them to the dark abyss below. And as the ground trembled beneath their feet, Jack had to ask, could they truly face the tempest together? Or would the secret imbued in the girl swallow them whole? The ground shook violently as Jack's plea echoed into the chaos. The chasm yawned wide, dark and terrifying, with jagged edges that looked hungry for the unwary. Jack felt the force of the storm crashing around them, wind soaring like a living creature. He was torn between pulling the girl to safety and the impossible gravity pulling at her. No! He shouted, voice raw, desperation clawing at him. Her hands moved again, fingers punctuating the stormy air with urgency. Be with me. She seemed to sign, her resolve stronger than metal. Jack's heart slammed in his chest. Did she know something he didn't? Was there more to her gift than he understood? Suddenly, a deafening boom crashed above, and Jack's instincts kicked in. We have to jump back. But the girl stood firm, unyielding against the storm's wrath. As if an invisible thread bound her to the tempest, she reached deep within herself, her eyes shimmering with an energy that seemed to flicker and pulse along with the angry sky. Jack felt a tremor of fear ripple through him. Was he too late? What if this girl embraced the vast and terrible force, and the storm unleashed something beyond control? Confusion twisted his thoughts. What are you doing? He shouted, panic narrowing his field of vision, the danger ramping up each second. The girl's hands moved with furious intent, powerful and unbroken. Within her, a beacon shone, a hope tethered to something bigger than them both. Jack caught on to the purpose. She desired to meld with the storm, to draw upon its energy as if it were her own breath. For the briefest moment, the storm softened, a whisper of awe buried beneath chaos. Jack held his breath as darkness danced lazily around the girl. It curved, shifted, loomed, and glowed, strange colors glistening as if the sky saved its brightest hues for her alone. His heart swelled. If they could harness this moment, they could face the storm together. "Show me!" he shouted above the howl, prompting her to guide him into this chaotic ballet. She nodded and began to weave intricate patterns, a dance of fingers manifesting a language he couldn't speak but longed to understand. Her movements were fluid, elegant, drawing Jack closer until he felt warmth against the frozen terror in the air, a connection that ignited courage. Then it happened, a rush of power surged from her, coursing through Jack like he was a wire connecting a flickering light to an electric source. Visceral flashbacks overwhelmed him, laughter, loss, longing, emotions bursting from the depths of his soul. Memories of joy and sorrow flooded through him, all ignited by the girl's extraordinary essence. This was their chance, but just as the storm seemed ready to yield, the earth beneath groaned in protest, and the chasm widened further, devouring bulky pieces of earth with voracious speed. Panic surged anew, feeding his fear. "What if we can't control it?" he shouted. One wild look exchanged between them, then the girl's focus sharpened, stoking the flares of energy swirling above and around. She drew strength from the storm, emboldening the atmosphere and suffusing it with a long-forgotten hope. Jack could barely breathe, he could feel her resolve wrapping around him like armor. "Then we'll take it back," she signed fiercely, a declaration cutting through the howl of the winds. Jack grasped the enormity of her conviction. They had to confront the storm head-on together, drawing strength from each other rather than fleeing in despair. But then, an unearthly wail tore through the tempest as if the storm itself resented their defiance. Dark clouds coalesced into a monstrous shape, a shadow aiming its fury directly at them. Jack's thoughts raced. "Hold on!" he roared, pulling her closer against the approaching hurricane of darkness, hoping to channel her strength. The realization slapped him hard. Was it merely the storm they had to confront? Or was it something much darker, something far more personal? With the storm's rage intensifying, Jack felt the battle ignite within. Could he bridge the gap between their two worlds? Or would they be swept away, shadows lost in the depths of the storm? The dark shape loomed closer, its presence suffocating, fed by the fury of the storm. Jack's heart raced as he gripped the girl tightly, feeling her power coursing through him amid the chaos. He could see her resolve, the light in her eyes like a lighthouse in a tempest. The ground shook again, more violent this time, rattling the bones of the earth. Jack barely heard the howl of the winds over the intensity of that shadow, but he didn't need to. The storm transformed, churning with anger as if it was alive, seeking them out. "Stay with me," Jack shouted, not sure if he meant it for her or himself. He felt the swirling energy grow around him, wrapping them together like invisible currents of lightning. The girl's fingers curled and twisted in the air, drawing threads of the storm closer, guiding Jack to move along with her dance, both mesmerized and terrified. Each gesture was a mix of desperation and grace, summoning forces that were both beautiful and horrifying. A whisper escaped his lips as he tried to follow her lead, the warmth of her essence making his blood surge. Boom! A pulse of energy shot from the storm, sending a jolt through Jack, but instead of breaking his focus, it ignited something deep inside him. "Let us show it," he barely managed to yell over the tumult. With each move she made, Jack felt a piece of his fear dissolve, replaced by an all-consuming fire. They were not just victims of the storm, they could harness its wrath. The monstrous shadow twisted ominously in the chaos, a collector of darkness, leering hungrily. Jack could see its intent, a desperate attempt to consume their shared courage. "We can't let it win," he shouted, his words lost in the gale. In that moment of clarity, the girl's expression shifted as though she was reading his thoughts. Her hands flared in the air, dancing like the flicker of flames. To Jack, it seemed she was speaking to the storm itself, coaxing it, alluring it like a dancer persuading a reluctant partner. Somewhere in the chaos, a build-up of energy resonated between them, charging the very air. Jack's pulse quickened, his mind racing ahead of the dark shadow chasing them. He closed his eyes for just a heartbeat, reveling in the powerful pull of the storm, the thrill of sharing in its fury. Yet, he heard it then, the faintest echo within the roar, memories of a life he didn't know, of pain and laughter interwoven. "Show me your truth," he bellowed to her, his voice barely cutting through the turmoil. Her gaze sharpened, the light in her eyes crackling with voltage, and it all sparkled like stars against the night. "Let us become part of it," he shouted, suddenly aware of their connection to not only the storm but the churn of life around them, a tangled mess of joys and sorrows. But the shadow lunged again, closer now, threatening to swallow them whole, its edges serrated and howling madness. Jack felt the weight of dread forming a knot in his stomach. They needed to release what bound them to the storm, unwrap the fear and charge it with purpose. "Now!" he cried out, his breath mingling with the winds as they sank deep into the storm's rhythm. Together, they wove an intricate pattern of hope and strength, two beating hearts striving against an onslaught of darkness, a chance to rewrite their fates. That as the storm rallied against them, power surged, and the ground shook beneath their feet, but this time it felt different. Jack glanced at the girl, awe flickering in their shared glance. There was something about her, a depth he hadn't yet fathomed. And just as they reached the climax of their dance, the world erupted around them. A blinding flash, as if the storm itself was dividing, wrapped them in light before sending a shockwave that sent them flying. When the chaotic symphony subsided, silence returned. Jack landed hard, breathless, vision swimming. The storm was gone, but something else lingered in the air, a question twisting his insides: what had they unleashed? Some flickering shadows danced at the edges of his vision, revealing not just what was lost, but what remained, and what lay ahead. He struggled to sit up, the weight of the world pressing down as fear cracked against the backdrop of hope. "Where are we?" Jack gasped, scrambling to find the girl. He had to understand what they had just done together. Was this a victory against the storm? Or had they accidentally opened the door to something even darker? The answer felt imminent. Jack blinked against the brightness, trying to shake the fog from his mind. The silence felt surreal, an eerie contrast to the chaos moments before. He pushed himself up gingerly, feeling every ache in his bones, as if he had just fought an invisible battle. The ground was firm beneath him, no trembling, no shadows cast by the storm, at least, not the one they had just faced, but the unsettling stillness was punctuated by something faint yet undeniable, a gnawing sound. It was distant at first, like a whisper carried on the wind, but it grew louder, a haunting refrain that stolen away his comfort. Jack's heart started racing again, the unease curling tight in his chest. Where is she? A sudden panic seized him. He scanned the horizon. The landscape was unfamiliar, perhaps a different world entirely. Jagged hills loomed under a sky that was calming but still crackled with something others might not see. "Lila!" he shouted, his voice carrying out into the open, mingling with the remnants of the storm's rage. Nothing. Just a desolate blanket of forlorn silence. His breath quickened as he struggled to understand. Had she been taken? Was she lost in that blinding flash? As if summoned by his call, movement flickered at the edge of his vision. Jack pivoted, hope blazing in his chest, but all he found was a shadow, thin and slithering away from the light. It wrought a chill down his spine, leaving sweat beading on his brow. "Get back here!" he called, feeling the instinct to chase this mysterious figure. The shadow bobbed and weaved, retreating farther into the twisted shapes of the landscape as though it were a mirage he could never reach. Every step he took unleashed a deep resonance in the earth, responding to something other than the chaos of moments past. Suddenly, a familiar voice interjected, sharp as glass. "You cannot find her here." The shadow solidified, revealing a figure clad in tattered robes, an ephemeral being that shimmered like the last light of day. Jack's skin prickled, this was no simple apparition. "Who are you?" Jack demanded, clenching his fists in defiance. Fear coursed through him like ice, but he wouldn't back down. "Where is Lila?" The girl you hold dear dwells beyond the veil of this dimension now, the figure said, its voice hauntingly melodic and ancient. Your bond with her has opened doors that are not meant to be opened. Jack's heart sank. What do you mean? We saved each other from the storm. I felt her power. We can find a way back. The storm was only the beginning. Its remnants have grown restless, and now they hunger for more, the figure warned, beginning to dissolve into dust, its edges blurring against the fading light. You may have unleashed both hope and despair. Wait! Jack shouted, desperate. What are you talking about? Is she safe? The answer lies within, it murmured, and with a swift breath, it vanished completely, leaving behind an empty void and a sense of dawning dread. Jack stumbled back, grappling with the enormity of what had been said. An uncomfortable churn in his belly hinted that the storm didn't just end, it had shifted, it had transformed into something else. He braced himself, a part of him knowing he wasn't just a bystander anymore. He had wrested the storm's power, but to what end? Would he be able to bring Lila back from wherever this new state of existence was? What had he awakened? It felt as if a myriad of possibilities were swirling around him, each one darker than the last, yet hanging on a fragile thread of hope. He took a deep breath, steadied his posture. Jack knew he had a decision to make. The bond he shared with Lila wasn't just about survival, it was deeply rooted in a purpose yet unknown. You might open doors, he whispered to the fading sun, but I'll find a way to close them, even if it kills me. In that silence, a soft glow began to collect on the horizon, a flickering ember calling to him, a beacon of light, or perhaps the beginning of an even greater storm. He felt an eerie anticipation wash over him. Could he really face the darkness coming? Jack took a step forward, determination igniting once more as he prepared to uncover the truth hidden ahead. The mystery of Lila's gift lingered at the edge of every shadow, waiting to be revealed, and he was ready to dive into the abyss. The flickering light grew brighter, pulling Jack like a moth to a flame. Every step felt heavy with doubt, but he pressed on, a gnawing urgency driving him. Heart pounding, he moved toward the source, dodging outcroppings that jutted from the ground like jagged teeth. What if Lila was waiting for him on the other side? The image of her smile fueled him. He thought of the warmth in her laugh, the spark in her eyes. But calling her name felt like a fool's chant in this eerie landscape, where whispers laughed in the wind. The glow danced tauntingly ahead, and as he approached, it morphed into a swirling mist, shifting and swirling like something alive. Jack's breath hitched. This wasn't merely a light, it throbbed as if it contained a pulse, a heartbeat. Could it be connected to Lila? Suddenly, the air thickened, pressing down on him like an unseen weight. He stumbled, the shadows around him darkening, swirling into a tempest. The haunting gnawing sound returned, louder and more insistent, an echo of his heart's frantic pace. Lila! He shouted again, voice strained with desperation, his throat tight as if gripped by invisible fingers. There was a deep crackle of energy, and the skies above shifted ominously, clouds morphing into ominous shapes. With every step, Jack felt the earth underfoot vibrating, not from fear or dread, but from something intensely alive and hungry. His resolve started to waver as he realized the place he was entering was wrapped in something ancient and dark. Then he saw her. A figure stood in the distance, a silhouette against the glowing mist. Jack's heart raced. It was Lila. He dashed forward, fear and elation colliding in his chest. But as he drew closer, an icy chill ripped through him. The light flickered, revealing not just Lila, but the shimmering energy coiling around her like chains binding her, pulling her deeper into the mist. Lila! He shouted, panic clawing at his throat as he finally reached her. She looked ethereal, her hair lifting around her like tendrils of smoke. But in her eyes was a depth of sadness he'd never seen before, one that told him she was trapped, held captive by something otherworldly. Jack, her voice was soft, wavering, as if she were speaking through water. You shouldn't have come here. Why? What is this place? I came to save you. He reached out, fingertips brushing against the shimmering energy, and it resonated with a hum, pulling him in like a magnetic force. "It's too late for me," she cried, her voice growing hoarse. "This power, it can't be controlled. The deeper it pulls, the more it consumes. You don't understand what you've done." The realization hit Jack with the force of a slap. The doors he had opened had consequences he couldn't have fathomed. His instincts screamed at him to turn back, to run. But the thought of leaving her in this twilight realm filled him with a suffocating dread. "I want to let them take you," Jack yelled, anger surging through him. Panic morphed into determination. "I'll fight whatever this is. I'll find a way to bring you back." But the chains of light flared violently, pushing him back with a force that sent him sprawling to the ground. Shadows writhed, laughter echoing in the air like a cruel taunt. "Jack!" Lila's voice pierced through the chaos, clear and strong. "You have to go. Please, save yourself." The shadows grinned, twisting in delight at the chaos they stirred. An anguished scream bubbled in his throat. How could he leave her? How could he abandon her in a place like this? But the darkness closing in around him felt thick, suffocating. "I'll find a way back," he promised through grit teeth, scrambling to his feet. As he turned to leave, the ground trembled, the previously solid landscape shifting underfoot. It wavered and rippled like it had a heart of its own. Jack's heart raced as he plunged into the chaotic clamor. Will he make it out before the darkness consumes him too? Can he find a way to bring Lila back from beyond the veil? Every instinct screamed for him to survive, but the shadows howled for him to surrender. In the pulse of the earth. Beneath him, Jack felt the desperate thrumming of time running out. With each frantic step, he wondered, would this be the end, or merely a path to something far worse? As he charged into the unknown, a pulse echoed around him, a heartbeat that thrummed ominously, and for the first time, Jack wondered if the darkness had its own plans. What awaited him on the other side of this chaos? Jack stumbled back, the unyielding shadows swirling around him like a living entity. Panic pumped through his veins as he glanced back at the luminous figure of Lila, still ensnared in that pulsating web. The fear in her eyes was suffocating. The ground bucked like a wild animal, and sudden gusts of wind rippled through the air, mixing the smell of damp earth with something acrid. Jack felt the proximity of the darkness, a weight so heavy it gnawed at his resolve. He turned again, the mist ahead concealing pathways beneath strange, twisting branches. The urge to flee battled against the compulsion to save Lila. "I have to go," he shouted, each word laced with desperation. "Jack!" Her voice was a haunting melody, fraught with anguish. He could see her struggling against the energy that bound her. "Don't you dare look back. You must keep going." But how could he abandon her? He launched himself forward again, every muscle in his body screaming with exertion. As he broke into a clearing, the ground surged and split beneath him, sending him crashing to his knees. A veil of mist enveloped him, and whispers chased him like demons, taunting him with fragments of his own fear. "Remember what you came for, Jack." The one who calls you. Their voices melded into a cacophony, drowning out everything else. He blinked against the thick fog, his mind racing. What did they mean? Suddenly, he recalled the discussion he had with Lila before her disappearance, the talk about facing one's demons. He screamed her name. "Lila!" But the mist laughed, twisting the sound until it was unrecognizable. Jack stood and moved forward, heart thrumming like a war drum. He owed it to her. The image of her smile, her laughter, her unyielding spirit pushed him to keep going. As he plunged back into the swirling mass, something grabbed at him, pulling him into a dark pit filled with distant echoes. A voice, low and sinister, whispered directly into his ear. "You think you can save her? You have no idea what lies ahead." Jack's throat tightened. "What do you want?" he barked, voice steady despite the terror gripping him. "Control," it hissed, the shadows warping like snakes. "You opened a door, now it's time to pay." Sudden images flashed before him, fractured memories of Lila, moments of laughter twisted into something dark and grotesque. Horrifying truths of her family echoed in the distant realms, a history soaked in regret and sacrifice. He staggered back, overwhelmed. The truth of what he had disturbed nipped at his sanity. Every decision he made, every second he hesitated could drag him into a void from which there would be no return. Jack. Lila's voice came again, clearer this time, slicing through the malevolence. He glanced back, and there she was, still ensnared but somehow closer, her eyes fiery with determination. You mustn't give in. Trust yourself. Her words ignited a spark within him. Summoning every ounce of strength, he tore himself away from the tendrils of despair, plunging deeper into the mist. What felt like hours turned into a matter of seconds, his pulse racing as he ran headfirst into the storm, trying to bypass the shadows that clawed at him. The whispers intensified, a furious roar. He is ours. No. Not today. He could almost feel the tug of Lila's energy reaching for him, as if she was fighting against the confines of whatever trapped her. Hold on. Just hold on. He yelled, throwing himself forward. Then, suddenly, the ground shifted once more, and he stumbled into a clearing that felt different, or perhaps it was the refreshingly cool air that hinted at hope. Before him stood a massive black tree, its trunk gnarled and ancient, radiating a faint, inviting glow at its roots. It felt like a safe harbor in an ocean of chaos, and he could see that Lila's light flickered from its base. But before he could reach for her, an ear-splitting crack echoed around him, shaking him to his very soul. The ground trembled, and the dark shadows howled in furious dismay, knowing they were about to lose their grip. Jack! Lila shouted, a warning laced with urgency. He glanced back just in time to see a dark whirlpool forming behind him, shadows lashing out with malevolence. The stakes were dangerously high, and now it was clear, the shadows didn't want him alone, they wanted Lila too. Would he be able to harness the power of the tree? Could he reach Lila and bring her to safety before the darkness descended upon them both? In the heart of chaos, Jack realized one crucial truth: the chains they fought against bound not only Lila but his own desperate spirit as well. He took a step forward, fueled by raw determination, feeling the weight of destiny shift in his favor. A voice from deep within echoed an unsettling question: was he the savior, or would he become another victim in their insatiable grasp? With time sliding through his fingers, he prepared to fight the inevitable. What would he have to sacrifice in the end to conquer the darkness that hungered for them both? Jack's heart pounded like a jackhammer. The massive tree loomed in front of him, its roots pulsing with Lila's light. It was a beacon, a symbol of everything that was good and everything he risked losing. But the darkness howled behind him, a sinister crescendo that threatened to swallow him whole. Jack! The roots, they can help you. Lila's voice broke through the chaos. She strained against her bindings, her spirit flickering in the air like a flame. He could see them now, tentacle-like shadows reaching hungrily towards her, wanting to devour the very essence of her being. Fear ignited a fire in Jack's chest. He sprinted toward the tree, desperate to wrap his fingers around those glowing roots, but the shadows surged, and a chilling wind howled through the clearing. Jack's skin prickled as if 1,000 icy fingers danced over him. He dove for the tree, slipping to his knees. In that moment, a strange warmth enveloped him. It wasn't just the glow from the roots, it was something deeper, resonating with each pulse of the earth. He grasped a thick root with shaky hands, feeling the energy surge through him like electricity. What do I do? He screamed, his voice becoming more frantic as the shadows crept closer, their whispers growing sharper and more accusatory. Channel it! Lila shouted, her own voice now tinged with urgency. You have to believe, Jack. Believe? The word echoed in his mind as a shadow flicked dangerously close. Jack gritted his teeth. He could do this. He had to do this. The love he had for Lila, everything they had shared, spurred him forward. With fierce determination, he closed his eyes and focused on that radiant energy emitting from the roots. He pictured Lila, bright and full of life, her laughter filling his ears. He poured everything he had into the roots, and suddenly, the world around him shifted dramatically, the shadows hissed in fury, fluttering away from the light like moths. Jack felt a wave of power surge through him. It was exhilarating, intoxicating, a feeling he had never known before. "Jack! I can feel it!" Lila cried, her voice rising above the havoc. "You're doing it!" That spark of hope ignited a fierce blaze in his chest. The dark pit behind him began to recoil. Jack focused harder, amplifying the energy with every heartbeat. He envisioned the life they could forge together, freeing her from the ensnarement of the dark, but just as victory seemed close, the ground shook violently. A massive crack tore through the earth, and Jack was thrown backward, the power dissipating for just a moment. He gasped, trying to catch his breath, trying to steady himself against the tidal wave of darkness rushing back toward him. "Jack, stay strong!" Lila shouted, but the urgency in her tone struck him deep. The horrific shadows were regaining their thickness, solidifying into distinct forms. Faces twisted in anguish, smirking like demons, even as they clawed at the air. "He is weak." One of the voices howled, erupting in laughter that sliced through the fear engulfing Jack. "He thinks he can control what he does not understand. You'll never save her." Panic clawed at Jack's heart. What did it want? What was it ready to take from him? The whispers slithered around him, cruel and taunting. "Jack!" Lila's voice broke through, slicing like a sword, renewing his focus. "This tree is our best chance. You can't let it go." He scrambled back to his feet, each movement amplified by the growing shadows. Mustering every ounce of courage, he reached for the roots again, the warmth filtering through him, blinding him from the darkness closing in. "Come on, Jack. It's your turn to shine," Lila called. With the shadows thrumming against him, he unleashed everything. Power surged through him, resonating with the roots connected to the ancient tree. A blinding glow erupted outward, forcing the darkness to falter and retreat. The crack in the ground widened, devouring some of the shadows that had laughed and taunted him moments before, but instead of letting up, the darkness transformed, thickening into a single, grotesque figure, a foul amalgamation of fear and hatred. "Foolish boy!" It rasped, launching toward him, the air thick with an overwhelming malevolence. In that split second, a revelation hit Jack harder than a punch. This figure was the embodiment of everything he had ever feared, and it was here to take everything. "Lila!" He screamed, not just for her but for the strength they could wield together. As the figure bore down on him, Jack clenched his fists in defiance, ready to make a choice that would alter everything. Would he confront this embodiment of darkness with Lila at his side, or risk everything to save her and face his fears alone? The answer hovered at the edge of his consciousness, waiting to erupt. Jack felt every nerve in his body light up with a fierce resolve. The grotesque figure loomed closer, sending waves of dread crashing over him. It was the embodiment of all his fears, the failures, the burdens, and the darkness that had clouded his soul for so long. Yet, within that terror, something powerful sparked, urging him to fight back. "Lila!" Jack shouted, desperation sharpening his voice, intertwining with anger. "We can do this together." He closed his eyes, drawing from the energy that pulsed through the roots of the ancient tree, a warm light spreading into every corner of his being. His heart raced, a palpable rhythm that throbbed with determination. "Believe." Lila's voice rang out, clear and strong. Her trust in him ignited a fire within his chest. He opened his eyes, the glow from the roots brighter than ever, pouring strength into him. The dark figure hesitated, recoiling as the light surged forth, illuminating the nightmare that sought to devour him whole. "You think you can control this?" It hissed, a grotesque sneer contorting its features. The shadowy mass writhed, desperate to reclaim the fear it feasted on. "Yes." Jack roared, the echo of his own conviction booming louder than the darkness closing in. "I won't let fear take anyone away, especially not her." In that heartbeat, he focused. He envisioned Lila, the laughter they had shared, her warm smile, and the bond they had forged against every impossible odds. He let that love seep into the roots, his heart entwined with hers, amplifying the energy swirling in the ether. Let it go. Lila's voice called again, and with that, he felt their connection swell like the tide, an unstoppable force of light that intertwined their spirits. With a fierce burst, Jack unleashed that raw power, an explosion of brilliance radiating through the dim void, flooding the dark figure with blinding light that broke the grip of shadows, illuminating the path forward. The darkness writhed, howling in pain as the pressure around him shifted, the whispers turning to frantic cries, scrambling in confusion, the figure shrieked, its form contorting wildly. "You cannot escape!" It bellowed, but Jack felt the shadows weakening, felt Lila's spirit reaching out through that bond they had cultivated. Together. He shouted, feeling invincible. "We're stronger than this." With each pulse of their united strength, the grotesque figure began to fragment, like smoke in the wind, dissipating amid the light. The roots of the tree shone brighter, responding to their shared belief and love, binding them against the darkness, forcing it to give way, and then it happened, a final clash as the blinding light erupted, engulfing both Jack and Lila. A wave of warmth swept through him, something primal and pure, as if they had rewritten the very fabric of their fates. For a heartbeat, time froze, caught in that moment of transcendent clarity. Jack felt Lila's spirit wrap around him, grounding him, and beneath the chaotic crescendo, the shadows withered into nothing, the clearing fell silent. Lila stood before him, the pulsating light fading to a soft glow around them. Jack's breath caught in his throat. "Is it over?" he whispered, uncertainty knitting his brows. Lila's smile flickered, innocent, radiant. "No, this is just the beginning." Tendrils of dark mist still thinned at the edges, but Jack felt an undeniable shift, a new balance in the air. He reached for Lila's hand, their fingers clasping with a warmth that surged through him, signaling they had triumphed. But a shadow loomed at the corner of his vision, tainted whispers slowly returning. A chill curled around him, coiling tighter as it began to weave new tendrils of darkness. "It doesn't end here, does it?" Jack murmured, dread rustling within him. They had fought through the storm, wrested themselves from despair, but now the whispers howled, jagged with unfinished business. Lila's expression hardened as she squinted into the darkness. "No, it doesn't. But this time, we'll face it together. We'll find a way, right?" Jack met her gaze, his heart racing. He could feel the shadows marching nearer, but with Lila at his side, he felt stronger. "Always," Lila replied, confidence shone in her eyes like a beacon. And with that, they turned to face the encroaching darkness together. Jack took a deep breath, fortified with the strength of their bond. Whatever lay ahead would not break them. They had each other. And they wouldn't back down. "Let us go," he said, head held high, ready for the fight. Together, they stepped into the shadows, determined to chase away the darkness once more. The whispers may linger, but now they would weave their destiny on their own terms. Their journey was far from over, but whatever trials awaited them, one truth remained: a love that transcended fear, unfurling hope against the howling tempest. You need to subscribe to the channel immediately so this incredible story doesn't slip away. Smash that like button now to fuel the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this unbelievable finale. Your support means everything in keeping this adventure alive.